Alright, today I'm going to show you the very simple process I used to texture the tree armatures I made in the previous video and paint them up so they look pretty decent. So texturing the wire armatures that I made I did in 2 steps. The first thing I did was make a paste out of filler and PVA glue. And this is what I used to fill in the spaces in the wire armatures to make it look more like one solid piece rather than a bunch of wires wrapped around each other. So I just got a few scoops of filler and then added a fair amount of PVA glue to thin that down into a fairly pliable consistency. I would say it's probably about the consistency of yogurt, maybe like a thick Greek yogurt, probably is what I would compare it to. And I didn't use any specific measurements, and I just grabbed a bunch of filler out with a paintbrush and then added glue until I got the consistency that I wanted, that I felt I would be able to use the paintbrush to slap it onto the armatures. And I believe I add a little bit more PVA glue to thin it down a little bit more. The filler that I used is actually a really light compound. It's called Fast and Final Lightweight Spackling. I just picked it up at Walmart. You'll be able to tell the difference just when you pick it up from a standard filler, as it is very lightweight compared to the more standard stuff. And it's really easy to use and really easy to clean up. So after I got that mixed up, I just used the paintbrush to apply it to the wire armatures and made sure I covered almost everything. I didn't do anything on the roots, and I did do just a very, very thin layer on the single strands of the branches. I wasn't worried about texturing the ends of the branches because that's where the foliage will be attached to, so they'll be hidden anyway. So you can see I just start slapping it on, and it is thin enough that you can just paint it on like a really thick toothpaste almost, and it'll stick to the wires and dry out, and it smooths everything out. So after I got that applied, I let it sit to dry. The filler itself will dry very quickly, but the PVA glue takes a while to dry. I'm sure you'll be familiar with the dry time of the PVA glue if you've been experimenting with making terrain and other stuff. So it's really the PVA glue slows down the drying process, so you do have to let it sit for a while. But once it is dry, you'll see that this stuff has made the tree look a little bit too smooth. It's filled in all the gaps of the wires, so if you've applied it just in a nice thin layer, the wires might still be visible, but the texture should be mostly hidden, but it is just a little bit smoother than I felt looked natural. So what I did was I went back with just the filler, again the same lightweight filler, and just use my finger to apply a nice thin layer onto the smoothed out areas of the tree to add just a little bit more rough texture, which looks like more of a bark-like texture. So then once you get that applied, and again, I for the most part left the individual wire branch areas alone, as they'll be covered up with foliage anyway. But once you get that applied all over, you leave that to dry, and that will dry pretty quickly compared to the first step, because the filler compound dries pretty quickly on its own. So then what you see I've done here is just spray painted it black to get my base coat, or to just get it primed. And I just used a really cheap spray primer from Walmart. And then I just use a really heavy dry brush of just a cheap brown, I think it's brown oxide paint. It's just super cheap acrylic paint, again from Walmart. And just slap that on pretty heavily all over the tree. Not worried about if there's little bits of black showing. It's not that big of a deal. This is my first base coat of this brown. I just slap it on real heavy, real quick, and it's real simple. The next step is just a more standard dry brushing of a medium brown compared to the darker brown. It's much more a typical dry brush than the first heavy dry brush. Make sure you get a lot more paint off the brush, and then you're just hitting that textured area with that lighter colored brown, just to bring out the textures and really highlight the bark, so it brightens up the tree a little bit and makes it look a lot more three-dimensional. And here you can see a zoomed in image, giving you a little bit better idea of what the texture looks like after it's been dry brushed. I think it looks pretty decent. You can see a little bit of the wires in the left hand tree there, but it really just looks like a gnarled tree rather than a wire wrapped armature like it started out. Thanks for stopping by and watching the video. If you like what you're seeing, please like and share and subscribe and all those good things that everybody asks you to do. I will be making another video for this to wrap up these trees. I'm just not certain that I'm really thrilled with how the foliage is turning out thus far. It is the way I've been putting it onto the armatures has been a little bit more challenging than I wanted it to be, and I do need to dress it up a little bit to make it look a little bit more realistic, so I'll be still experimenting with that before I make a video on that, but that will be coming in the future. So thanks for stopping by, and I hope to see you again soon.